How you doing, guys? Steve Salazzo here. I was asked to recreate this presentation that I did at the Buffalo 716 conference back on, of course, July 16th. Some of you were in attendance, and I went through this activity on how I introduce some of our, basic planar terms, concepts, point, line, plane, ray, stuff like that. And it's a great way, I think, to start the year off and get the kids doing something where they're building, and you can kind of see what kids are more mechanically inclined than others. And it's also a great way to see what students pay attention and who can follow directions. So I tend to start the year off like this, and it's kind of fun, and it allows students to answer those types of questions that maybe you remember from the old geometry regents exams, where they would show two planes intersecting and they'd have some lines and rays, and students had to analyze this three-dimensional figure put on a two-dimensional page and answer the questions. And I always thought they were very difficult for students to see. And so what I like to do is build something very similar to what they would see on an exam, and then after we build it, they're able to manipulate it and turn it around, and I think it really helps with a lot of their spatial awareness. So these are the supplies that you would want to start off with. I recommend 2 index cards. They could be 4x6, 5x7. It really doesn't matter. These are the smaller ones, so the bigger the better, but I think these will do. I do like the fact that they're lined on one side. You'll see why in a minute. But if you don't have lined index cards, you'll be fine. Also, straight edge, we're going to be drawing some lines, and I like to use the kind of marker flare pens because it really shows well when you label the stuff on the card. Pens and pencils work great, but I think the markers work better. Pair of scissors, you could even have the students share these. They don't really need them more than twice, I think, throughout this activity. Maybe 3 times, I guess. Right at the end we use it just to poke a hole. But the other part is you really want something that's got these pointed ends to them. If you have a class where you kind of don't trust the students, and we all have students like that, maybe you can find an alternative. Have a kid poke a pen or pencil through it. You'll see what I mean when I get to that part of the lesson. But these work best. So pointed scissors work well, but you can get around it if you don't have them, and that's something that maybe you can make an adjustment for as you do the lesson. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go through the lesson, kind of explain how I get the kids to interpret the terms. So I'll kind of teach it as a lesson, but I might break it up also and just have a conversation about something I'm doing on the teacher end of it. So we're going to start with just the 2 index cards here. So these represent 2 planes, and what we know about a plane, it's a 2-dimensional surface that extends in all directions. So we're gonna, imagine that this plane, this edge, really is extending, maybe with arrows here. And this is something I might want to talk to the kids about prior to introducing this. What do we know about planes and things like that, and then we could represent it here. Obviously, these are finite, but we know planes are infinite. They are on their surface, they consist of points, lines, rays, things such as that. So we're going to start with one of the cards, and with one of these cards, we're going to actually go right to the scissors, and we're going to cut off this top strip right here. We're going to use this later on in our construction. This will be used as a line we're going to draw on it. So we're going to cut through, and you may hear my cat or my daughter kind of running through and screaming with her friend. So, you may not want to show this in your class. You may want to watch it on your own, and you could laugh at me later. We're going to cut off this top strip. So now we have this top strip here. We also have 2 index cards, but one is now, smaller than the other. And we're going to label these. So I'll move this off to the side. We're going to use this later. And if you flip over the index cards, we'll start with the bigger one on top, smaller one on the bottom. The bigger plane, we're going to call this plane X. It's just the letter that I chose, and you could discuss with your students that planes can be named by a single letter, plane X. That letter is typically written in sort of in a capital italics, and here I'm just using big block lettering, and usually it's not X and Y. Sometimes it is. Usually you might see the capital R or S, and I know you're familiar with that. So on the smaller plane, In the top right corner, we're going to label this plane Y. So we have plane X and plane Y. We're going to start with plane X. And on plane X, we are going to grab our ruler and we're going to draw a line. A line across our plane, and it could be really drawn in any fashion. Most kids will want to copy the way that you draw it, sort of angled up or angled down. So as I'm doing it here, you'll see when I get done that it'll look nice when it's with the other plane, but it doesn't have to be necessarily drawn in this way. So we're going to draw this line. This line, we're going to put some points on it. We know a line consists of an infinite number of points in one direction, not the band. And we're going to start here at the end with point A. Somewhere along the way, we're going to have point B. And somewhere near the end here, we're going to have point C. So we could talk about naming this line. And sometimes lines are named with like a lowercase cursive letter, but often lines are named using the points that are on them. So some ways we can name this line would be, and this is where I'd ask the students, and you'd get, line AB, line BA, AC, BC, CA, all things like that, line ABC, CBA. You talk about betweenness and stuff like that. So we have our line here, and we are going to draw another line along this plane, and it's going to intersect the original line at point B. One thing that I also talk about here is the term collinear. So we talk about line ABC, and we talk about points A, B, C being collinear, and I ask students what they think of that term and what it means, and that's where they usually will tell you, oh, collinear, same line. You get some kids to say that. Okay, so we have this line. We're going to draw another line that intersects this line. So we talk about what intersection means. Now at this point when they're drawing this line, we want it to be long enough so that this card, when you take the other plane and line it up here, it'll have some room to intersect this plane. So I would not draw this line vertical because you're getting a little thin here. So I tend to tell the kids to draw this line at a nice angle. It's going to intersect the original line at B. So we're going to draw this line, and we're going to put an arrow on the ends. Now this part is probably the most complicated part of this construction, but it is important for us to have our cards line up correctly. So after we draw this line, I always tell the students, you really got to pay attention here. I don't want anybody getting lost. So once we draw this line in, we now have an intersecting line, but we don't have any points on it. We're going to get to the points in a minute, but we got to do it in a special way. So I'm going to take this card and I'm going to just line it up along the line here. And what you can see is I have the two ends of my card here and here, and I want to make note of that on my card. So I'm going to line it up like this, and where this card ends, I'm just going to put a tiny mark. And where it begins here, I'll put a little mark as well. So I know that this distance is the width of the other card. I'm going to have to cut here and slide this card through. So it's a little bit a tougher part of the construction, but I find the kids really, you do this the first or second day, and they're paying attention. You try to do this near the end of the year, and it's going to look like garbage, and they're going to throw them across the room. We all know how that goes, but anyway, so now that we have labeled this marking, these are not where our points are going to go. They're just for us to measure. So inside of these points, we are going to place 2 more points here. Okay? So we have 2 points inside here, and before we actually do that, so this is sort of a little mistake I made, but it's fine. It's something I should have done before, but we're still good. I do want to put some other points on this plane, and it goes along with the letters I use on my worksheet. So before you do all of this, you may just want to have the students do what I'm about to show you. I'm just going to place 2 other random points somewhere on my card. I'm going to call these D and E. And then I'd also probably talk to the students about naming the plane. Plane ABD, plane ACE. Planes can be named with 3 points, and I'd go through the fact that it cannot be collinear points, so ABC would not be a correct name for the plane of X because it's collinear points, and you need to have the 2-dimensional a triangular form of these points. So I have D and E here, so I apologize about that. I would put those in first, and then these 2 points I'm now going to call F and G. So I would talk about line ABC intersecting line FBG at point B. So you can use the terminology, they're paying attention. Hopefully you're talking slower than I am. Try not to make this video too long for you. So we have 2 intersecting lines. Our goal now is to cut this card from this mark that we